How are we doing, ladies and gentlemen? We are now less than 2 weeks away from the NBA draft. It's next Thursday. Crazy that it's almost here, which means we're also less than 3 weeks away from free agency. So while things have been relatively quiet as relates to offseason moves and transactions, they are going to start picking up pretty quickly as we get closer to draft night. And aside from the obvious prospects getting drafted on draft night, the other thing that happens that evening, more so than any other time aside from the trade deadline, are trades. And given everything that's going on with this Bulls team, the fact that we know changes need to be made, whether or not they'll actually happen is a different story, but because we have been seeing so many trade scenarios floating around, whether it be the Bulls trading up into the top 3 of the draft, blowing it up and trading away their main core, or just retooling and moving on from some of their veterans, I thought I would ask you guys to send me some of your best trades that you would like to see the Bulls make, and then I'll make a video where I react to them, which is what we're going to be doing in this one. So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Now, first of all, thanks to all those who sent in the trade packages. I received way more than I thought I was going to get. Just shows how passionate this fan base is and wanting to see changes to the team. But because I received so many, I wasn't able to include everyone's, and also there were a lot of very similar trades with some minor tweaks, so I tried to package in the most common themes. But anyway, we'll start with this one from King Dono NBF. Zach Lavine, Alex Caruso to Portland for the number 3 pick, and then the second trade, DeMar DeRozan to the Clippers for Robert Covington, Terrence Mann, Bones Highland, and the Clippers first round pick for this year. Now, I did say when I posted to have you guys send me your trades to try to keep them realistic, and while this one isn't 100% out of the realm of possibility, it's pretty close. I mean, I love this trade for the Bulls. You're talking about getting a top lottery pick in a stacked draft class, which most signs are indicating that Scoot Henderson is actually going to fall to number 3. You get some shooting with Robert Covington, young players in Mann and Bones Highland, and another draft pick from the Clippers, and all you have to give up is Lavine, DeRozan, and Alex Caruso, which I know to some Bulls fans might seem like a lot, but you also have to understand, given the season the Bulls just had, DeMar and Zach's trade value is not very high. Lavine, sure, probably more so because he's younger in his prime, but he's also on a max contract for the next 4 seasons, and while DeMar, still a great player, going to be 34 and on an expiring deal. I just don't see the Clippers willing to give up all of that for DeRozan. And then for the Blazers, I mean, you're on the right track, because if they are wanting to go all in on Dame, adding a player like Zach Lavine as well as Caruso to give them some defense is a good option. I think they're going to be wanting a little bit more than that, though, for the number 3 pick when they know a lot of teams are going to be vying for that pick. Maybe if the Bulls throw in sending Portland's pick back to them, the lottery protected one, then you might have a shot. But just Lavine and Alex Caruso, I don't know that that gets it done. Next, we've got Cameron McKee, and it's a 3-team trade with the stipulation of if Portland wants to run it back and if Jaylen Brown wants out of Boston, then this trade would work. Blazers receive DeMar, Jaylen Brown, and Alex Caruso. Celtics receive Lavine, Anthony Simons, and then the Bulls get Nurkic, Derek White, Luke Cornett, Matisse Thybulle, and the number 3 pick. So here's the thing. This is actually an interesting trade because I really like it for the Blazers and the Celtics, but I don't like it for the Bulls. I mean, don't get me wrong, this is a very creative trade that gives the Blazers what they would need and 2 bona fide all-stars that are a supporting cast for Damian Lillard and DeMar DeRozan and Jaylen Brown, as well as Alex Caruso. That's a massive upgrade to their roster. The Celtics, after giving up Jaylen Brown, they're still getting Zach Lavine and a young up-and-coming player in Anthony Simons, so it works for them if they're unsure about their future with Brown. But then the Bulls, yes, you're getting the number 3 pick, which is huge, don't get me wrong, but you're also taking on a bad contract in Nurkic. Luke Cornett, I mean, it's Cornett, Bulls legend, but no thanks. Matisse Thybulle, good for some defense, but he's fallen off drastically since his beginning days in Philly. Derek White is nice, but more or less, this is a trade for the number 3 pick, and you're giving up Zach Lavine, DeMar DeRozan, and Alex Caruso for it. That's a lot for just 1 draft pick. I know I said Lavine and DeRozan's trade value isn't as high as some Bulls fans think, but they're certainly worth more than the first-round draft pick and a couple role players, especially if you're throwing in Alex Caruso, and especially if the Bulls are also needing to take on a bad contract with it, like Jusuf Nurkic. Next, receive this one from the trade machine. Bulls trade DeMar and Drummond to the Lakers for Malik Beasley, Mo Bamba, and Jared Vanderbilt, along with the number 17 pick from this year's draft and a future second-round pick. This isn't a bad trade because you'd have to think for the Lakers after making the conference finals, seeing them turn their season around when it looked like they might even miss the playoffs initially, they're probably under the impression they are right there to win another title, even though it's probably not the case. And making a move to bring in a player like DeMar, who we know they were interested in already, but then prioritized Russ over DeMar, which was a massive mistake. I could see them potentially going for this. Now, for most teams, I would say no, there's no chance that they would even consider a trade like this, but it's the Lakers. We all know they have the smallest window to try and get a title with LeBron, and they may think a guy like DeMar DeRozan puts them over the top. For the Bulls, I like it because they get younger, add some shooting, some size and depth, rim protection, as well as a mid-first round pick. Yeah, I mean, it's not bad. I would like to see if you can get a little more for DeMar, especially when we've been talking about trading up into that top 3, but I think for trading for that pick in particular, getting in the number 3 pick anyway, you're going to be talking about trading Zach Lavine and some pieces for that pick. DeMar wouldn't get it done. Next, we've got Jaden, Zach, and Lonzo for the 2nd pick, Hayward, Rozier, and Nick Richards. I mean, I know some will laugh at this, but hey, it's the Hornets, one of the most incompetently run franchises in the league. I honestly would be shocked if they went for a trade like this. It's very likely that they would try and trade that number 2 pick because somehow they've convinced themselves that LaMelo Ball is their better option than Scoot Henderson as their starting point guard for the future. I mean, I made a video on this last week, but they're a desperate franchise that needs big names because they're not a free agency destination and can only attract big names by way of a trade. They have an incredibly valuable asset in the number 2 pick, and I honestly would not be shocked if they try and trade that pick to land an already established all-star, which in this instance could be Zach Lavine to pair alongside LaMelo. As for including Lonzo, I mean, yeah, we all know Lonzo doesn't have any trade value whatsoever, but if there was one franchise that would try and trade for him to get off some of their bad contracts like Gordon Hayward and even to an extent Terry Rozier, they might just do it to put the Ball brothers together, make it a big headline. Why not? So while I'm sure some would laugh at the trade proposal like this, it's actually not really that far out there. Next, I received this trade also via the trade machine. Bulls trade DeMar to the Nets for Joe Harris, Royce O'Neal, and the Nets' first-round pick for this upcoming draft at number 21, which they're getting from the Suns in that Kevin Durant trade. I mean, it's not a bad trade. The problem is I just don't see the Nets doing this. I mean, after the Nets moved on from Kyrie and KD, they acquired a bunch of draft picks, young players. They're restarting and looking toward the future. And I'm not sure how adding in a veteran player on an expiring deal like DeMar gets them what they're looking for. And for the Bulls, yeah, adding the shooting of Joe Harris is nice, although he's been very inconsistent since his injury. I actually like Royce O'Neal, and a first-round pick is great, but if they're looking to move on from DeMar, while his trade value isn't that high, you'd have to think again. You'd be able to get a little bit more from, especially from contending teams that are looking for that additional piece to put them over the top. Next, we've got Saquads, Barkley, Vooch, and Caruso to the Mavs for the number 10 pick and Christian Wood. So in this instance, you're talking about doing a double sign-and trade with Vooch and Wood, and then the Bulls also get the number 10 pick. I like it for the Bulls, just not sure the Mavs go for it. I think that they're going to be wanting to get more for that number 10 pick in return. And then the other thing is, I'm not sure the money would actually work in this instance because a sign and trade for Vooch, who most assume is going to be getting close to $20 million or so, while Wood is probably going to be getting closer to somewhere in the range of 12 to 14 million. And then the Bulls also including Caruso at 9, the money just doesn't work. You'd have to throw in another player from the Mavs side, something like a Tim Hardaway Jr. to match salaries. I like it though. The Bulls get a top 10 pick in a stacked draft class, but we all know a lot of teams are going to be calling the Mavs about that pick, and they're going to be giving it to the highest bidder, which I don't think that this package would be the one. Next, we've got Preacher Abe, DeMar DeRozan to the Kings for Rashawn Holmes and Kevin Huerter. Okay, DeMar's value might not be that high, but it's not that low. You're talking about giving up a perennial all-star and elite scorer who, yes, has his flaws, but giving that up for Huerter and Holmes, not draft picks or anything else. Getting Huerter would be nice for the shooting, but no, again, it goes back to if you're in fact going to be trading DeMar DeRozan, you can at least get more in return for him than just 2 role players at a minimum. A first-round pick would have to be included in the deal. This next one is interesting, also one sent to me from the trade machine. Bulls trade DeMar, Alex Caruso, as well as the Portland pick for DeJounte Murray, Onyeka Okongwu, and Sadiq Bey. Now, what I'll say is this, because while I don't think this is at all close to the value the Hawks would be looking for if they are in fact looking to ship out DeJounte Murray, which has been a rumor floating around more recently, I also don't think Murray's trade value is as high as people think it is. I've said this quite a bit, but the Hawks were insane to trade 3 first-round picks for Murray, 2 of which are unprotected. And then they still managed to be a mediocre team after that. And while Murray, yes, he's a great player in his prime, plays well on both ends of the floor, he's on an expiring contract and is going to be looking for a big payday, which a lot of teams are going to be wary offering him a fat contract with all their other committed salary. So yes, you can still get a decent haul for someone like DeJounte Murray. It's not going to be the same insane package deal the Hawks sent to the Spurs to get him though. That said, I do still have a hard time seeing the Hawks agreeing to this, especially when they're also giving up 2 young players in Okongwu and Bey. The first round pick is nice that the Hawks would be getting, and Alex Caruso gives the Hawks some needed defense as well, but I don't see it being enough to push the Hawks over the edge and wanting to make this deal happen. The next one comes from Game Over Maine. Bulls receive Jalen Suggs, Gary Harris, Jonathan Isaac. The Bulls get their own 2023 pick at number 11 and a 2025 pick from the Magic lottery protected, while the Magic get Zach Lavine. While I think this is a decent trade, the Bulls getting 2 first-round picks for Lavine, one of which we know is in the lottery, and you're also getting some younger players with some upside. I would hope that they could still get a little more for Lavine. I would prefer to see that second pick be unprotected or have very light protections, but I'm also not as high on Jalen Suggs. I know some are, but I just don't see his ceiling being very high in the NBA. Gary Harris is decent, but is nothing more than just a role player. And then Jonathan Isaac, I mean, that's really a bad contract thrown at this point because the man just can't stay healthy. Had a lot of promise coming into the league, but has barely been able to play since the bubble. And I don't see that suddenly changing. So while yes, I like the trade, I just think you have to get more if you're moving on from Zach Lavine. You'd have to think you're going to be able to get better offers for him around the league. Anyway, guys, I will end it there. Thanks to all of those who sent in their trades, and apologies if I wasn't able to get to yours. I'm going to try to do more of these types of videos to get you involved into the content, so be on the lookout for that. As always, be sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.